So I have something kind of neat to show you tonight. I was thumbing through temples and just happened to be on Pinterest, and I found this particular temple that you see right here in the middle, and this is in Nepal. This is an area around India, and what we see here, this temple is an ancient temple, but it reminded me, and if you take a look at this dome, this is what you see when you take a look at an Egyptian tomb. And what you're going to notice the similarities right off, where you have both the eyes and then the sun above the eyes, which is the sun of the mind, which is the pineal gland area. And this is also gone into by Manly P. Hall in my video, The Real Sun. So we have the sun of the solar system, which is the heart of the large macro prosopis, or macrocosmic man, and then the sun of the mind, which is where the pineal gland is, represents the nebula. Now here's what's interesting I found out about this. Okay, so if you take a look at the symbolism here, I did some reading and I found out that the stupa has Buddha's eyes and eyebrows painted on. Okay, between them the number 1. Okay, so that's extremely interesting, which I'll show you here in just a second. And it's in this Devanagari script. Okay, so if I take a look at this, here is what the number 1 looks like. And if we take a look at it, and I've got it on a video right here, and what we'll just do is we'll zoom in to see what they've done, because that's what they're talking about here. And as you can see, it's kind of like it trails up and then it goes into a spiral. This is also what you see on Buddha's forehead. When you take a look at Buddha, you see the spiral on his forehead. Now I find this extremely interesting because they've used the number 1 here, and they've also used it as a symbol, which leads me to believe, if we take a look at that script, that script numbers also have some kind of a correspondence to the symbolism or the esoteric symbolism that we see, like, for example, the spiral or the eye, which is represented by a vortex. Let me show you a picture of a Buddha real quick. So right here, you see the spiral, okay? And that is, I think, probably really significant. You see the spiral right in between his eyes, because that is what we see at the top of this right here. It's representing the same thing. And we have this also meaning number 1 in that script right here that we're looking at, which is, if you go up to the top, it looks pretty much like Sanskrit, okay? And there's a history of that, and I'll leave a link to that, for you in the video. But now let's take a look at the number 1, and let's take a look at something else. Okay, so right off you can see that the human body, once again, and its parts or its levels, like we have the pineal gland area, the 2 eyes, you can see they are personifying this into a temple. This is what we see in ancient Egypt. This is also what we see when we take a look at these cathedrals. The Great Pyramid, as Manly Hall put it, was also the symbol of a great meditation symbol. So if you picture somebody sitting Indian style inside of the pyramid, it's a lot like what you see when I've shown you the Buddha inside of the triangle. It's the same thing, the geometry there, except there's something else that they're showing with the Great Pyramid as well. The top of the Great Pyramid is missing because the top of the Great Pyramid represents the disappearance into the unseen part of the universe. So if we're taking a look at this cosmically, the pyramid goes up, we have cosmos, it reaches the top. Before it reaches the point, though, it disappears, and that is what the representation of that is. That's also what we see in the writings from Helena Blavatsky. So anyways, I thought that you would be interested to see that. And also, since the number 1 is being used, this is also Kabbalistic and also ties to the same area, because if we take a look, Kether, which is represented by the pineal gland, and what we see in these statues with the spiral right here, and what we see here, which is actually the symbol 1, but I guess they didn't put it up here, but it's basically the same thing that we see in the Buddha statue. Anyways, so this is Kether, and that is represented by number 1, 1, 2, 3, and this is the Trinity. And if we think of this cosmically, think of the cosmos as above, so below, cosmos to man, the top represents cosmically the Orion Nebula. And this is exactly why all of these cathedrals, as I've shown you in my other videos, use the nebula as the high altar, because the high altar is the area which is in the head, which represents the pineal gland. And that's the tetragrammaton that you see, for example, in Karlskirch. And there is some mystical information around this too that I'm not going to go into because it's too much of a deep conversation right now, but the mystery surrounding how they were able to recognize these things and then even plaster them in infrared as their high altars all the way back to the 1500s. Because if we take a look at when infrared was created, it was created in like around 1800, or it was discovered in 1800, I should say, not created. So that means that there's a 300-year gap, which means that something else is going on there. So it's kind of a mystery. But anyway, so if we take a look at the temple, and just like Timothy Hogan has mentioned before, these cathedrals, one of them was called the Children of Solomon. I think another one was called, I'll have to let Timothy talk about that when he gets on and is able to do an hour or so. I'm very interested in that. But he, as well as I, and I've noticed that these cathedrals, for the longest time, they're represented as man. We also see this inside of the temple in Man, which we see from R. A. Schwaller de Lubicz, which studied the Temple of Luxor for such a long time. So anyways, what I'm showing you here is the symbol 1 represents Kether. So when we take a look at this cosmically, it is represented as this vortex 1, which is the first manifestation into physical reality and then moving down into the cosmos. The eye is the point where everything disappears, which represents the missing part of the top of the pyramid. And this is what Blavatsky also goes into in her explanation. So I thought you would think that would be an interesting thing to see. We see another personification of the church as a human body. This is done all over the cathedrals, but I don't think that the priesthood originally, when those things were built, knew these types of secrets that were being posted up. See, Timothy says he doesn't know how they got away with that stuff, and I don't know how they got away with it either. But what happened in the process is that all of those cathedrals, they can't tear them down. It's the perfect way to communicate the information symbolically. When people finally figure it out, then what do? You can't take away all of these beautiful cathedrals that were built a long time ago. I mean, I guess you could, but they're all representing what all of these people wanted people to see, and the church, I don't think, knew about it, and I think Timothy believes the same thing. But anyway, the representation of 1, Kether at the top of the tree of life, cosmically, cosmos to man, this is the nebula. The eye in the center of the nebula represents the pineal gland. That's that vortex that exists inside there. This is what we see when we take a look at the painting by Michelangelo, right? The creation of Adam. This is the brain, because he's representing the pineal gland, which cosmically represents the Orion Nebula, just like we keep seeing all over these cathedrals. And what we just now recognized from seeing in the recent video I just posted. So anyways, I think you guys wanted you to take a look at this real quick, and I will talk to you soon. I'll leave the links in the description area.